Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone 2 Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to The Bend. I'm very excited to have my friend and my guest today, Eric Garcia. Eric and I go, way back, I guess, to when I started my business and maybe when he started his. But Eric is an IT expert. He is a digital marketer, industry thought leader. And when it comes to helping veterinary practices streamline their technology and attract and retain clients, Eric has a proven track record of educating the industry and producing results. He's an internationally recognized IT and digital strategist working exclusively with veterinary practices. In addition to a long list of satisfied clients, Eric's work has been recognized throughout the industry. He was voted VMX 2020 Speaker of the Year by conference attendees. He speaks regularly at conferences all throughout the world, and today he's ours. Yay!
Oh,
Welcome,
so
Eric.
good to see you. I missed your face, Debbie.
I tell you, I miss my conference family so much. And, you and I, we've had probably more than one drink together and had a good time every time we're together. So thank you so much for, being here with me on the bend. And I'm so excited to bring your story to the people who are going to listen and watch this because, it's just proof that there is a lot of diversity in careers in veterinary medicine if you find a need and fill it. And I think you certainly did that. But starting back at the real beginning, tell me kind of what your goal was in life. Did you think, oh, I'm going to grow up and be like a digital marketing guru?
Not at all. It kind of evolved on few occasions, as I suppose it does for many. But I think two things that I really thought I was going to be when I was younger. One of those was being an astronaut or a pilot. Just loved the idea of planes and just fascinated by the whole art of flying and the science behind it and the mechanics behind it. And so really thought when I was younger, I'm going to be a pilot. And then came a point in my life where I realized there's a lot of math that goes into that. There's
That Bertolli's equation, isn't that what it's called? The wing lift? And,
yes,
yeah.
that's exactly. Oh, that makes. I love that you know that.
Listen, I took aerospace engineering when I was in high school. I too love an airplane.
Yes, and so I mean, and aren't we in the right career now? But
Yeah, aren't we? Yeah. Up
it
until this.
well, right, yes, of course. But yeah, so I realized, I think it was probably in high school that I realized, like, yeah, no, that's not going to be a thing. I did well enough in high school, but I didn't do great. And so there came a point where I thought, well, that's not going to be for me. And I don't know, but at some point in my sophomore, junior year in high school, I thought I was going to be an actor in New York City. I think I lived that fantasy for a little bit. I'd even gotten a program to learn more about this, prestigious acting school in New York City. That probably lasted for about a year until I realized quickly that, that dream of moving to Los Angeles and being an actor, which, by the way, I don't know why I wanted to be an actor. I don't think I'm a great actor at all. In fact, when I thought I wanted to be an actor, I'd went to my guidance counselor at school, and I was actually known in high school as the techie. I did very well in computer science classes, won some awards. I was really big into TV productions, was really well known for that in high school. And so I thought, well, let me go ahead and join acting. So I joined acting class, and because everyone knew I was a techie, they looked at me and they said, "We're so happy you joined us. We need help from the technical aspect of drama, which is lighting and I guess a whole bunch of other things that I didn't really take time to get to know, because I went right back to my guidance counselor and I said, nope, that's, so that was very short lived. And then getting out of high school right before college, I thought that I would go to Full Sail, which is a very expensive college for you to be able to learn about TV productions. My brother is an executive producer at the Home Shopping Network. And as I kind of grew up, I really followed his footprints quite a bit. And so I thought I would do that until I realized that's more expensive than an in-state college, and that's not going to work out. So
Yeah. Yeah. So from that, you ended up in a veterinary hospital. How did that play out?
yeah, so it was pretty interesting. So in high school, I, like many people, had just kind of a whatever job. I worked at Papa John's, making pizza, and and so I did that, and then my friend, actually my best friend in high school, my senior year, she worked at a veterinary practice, and she said, why don't you come work here? You get paid more money, and while you're going through school. And so I said I'd love the idea of it. I think I was making like minimum wage at Papa John's, and they were going to pay me like $3 more. And so I went to go work. Literally, I graduated high school. And then the next morning, like I couldn't go out and party like everyone else was, because it was my first day at the practice. And so I started working in that practice while going through a community college, and then later going to college. And I remember the first day on the job there, I got the old veterinary welcome. I had a great day. They taught me how to clean the kennels and the use of Rocal and how all of that works, and restraining and all of that. And it was great. And then I thought, this is not too bad of a day. And then literally it was the end of the day. I was the last person there. I was getting ready to clock out, and they're like, "Hey, we need this patient brought up." And I was taking this dog that was going to be transferred to an emergency clinic up. And literally, as I'm walking down the aisle, it was a parvo dog, and just
Oh,
parvo
oh,
all
oh.
down. I mean, like just bright, disgusting, smelly diarrhea. And I thought to myself, yeah, this is not going to last that long. This is not for me. And yeah, and
Yeah,
so I by chance ended up working at this practice,
yeah.
which was crazy,
That
because
is
now.
so funny. That maybe we all have one of those stories, but I remember starting at one of the satellite practices. My hospital owner had two hospitals, and later moving to five. But I worked part time as a receptionist. One of our jobs was to weigh the animals, and so I remember starting, and I had my brand new like little nursey shoes on and my little white lab jacket, and I got this cocker to weigh. And she came over and she sat by me and peed in my brand new shoe. So that was one of my either first or second day on the job.
Oh
But
no.
but we toughed it out, right? So we're still here.
That's right. I mean, look, we're
Yeah.
making a living out of it, which is wild.
Yes. So true. So how did you get like up into like managing and then IT and social
Yeah.
media? Because I remember, I don't know if you remember this or not, but it's like 2008, one of my very first conferences as a business owner, and you and Andy Rourke and Dave Nickel were teaching a class on social media. And like prior to that, you taught me how to do Twitter, and I was I was sitting in the audience. It was a packed room, and you had this big, massive screen up there, and all the tweets were coming over on the screen. And I remember tweeting to you, Eric Garcia taught me how to tweet, not twerk. And, and you were on stage
I
trying to
turned
keep
red.
a straight face.
I turned red. I remember that. Actually, I remember that because I was that Twitter board, by the way, was so distracting to me because I would look at it, and then there were people like you who are saying that, and I'm just, Andy or Dave or someone's talking, and at some point I'm going to have to jump in, and I am not in that conversation. I am laughing at the fact that Debbie Boone's telling me that I didn't teach her how to twerk. And then one year, Allison Lambert, who I know you know very, very well, had said something else. I think offered me up for auction or something, just really, really awkward. And I looked at that, and Andy asked me a question. He's like, "And Eric, what do you think?" And I looked back, and I'd never felt this way. My whole body was just like tingly, burning sensation. And I was not, this was like, I was very new. I was not comfortable on stage yet. And I said, "I'm so sorry. I don't know what question." And luckily, Andy's great at
Oh,
just
he's just improv in a
making light of
way.
the
Yeah.
situation. And we moved on from that. But yes, I remember both of those instances very, very clearly.
As you can see, as it came up on the feed, all of a sudden the audience is like going,
And we
and
don't know.
Eric, and I'm watching Eric on the stage. And Andy and because you're responding to the tweets, and I
Right.
knew you would see it. And Eric, and Andy and Dave were talking, and then you're in there in the middle going like this. Oh my gosh. Oh well. But that was that was early in the game.
That was
So
very early.
how did you decide to move from being in the practice and managing a hospital? I know one of the things I read in your LinkedIn bio is, or watched your Vimeo video about your business, is that I know where these managers are coming from. This was me. I'm helping people who were just like me in this business. So how did you decide to say, you know what, I'm not going to manage practice anymore. I'm going to go out here and start my own business? Because that's a pretty big leap.
It was. So it was kind of a series of events. I think that really led to that point. Um, I had worked at the practice for maybe 2 years. So it was 2 years into my post high school education, and I remember I was just done. I didn't want to be an assistant, and I'd gone through this phase of, do I want to be a veterinary technician? Do I want to be a nurse in veterinary? And then I quickly kind of snapped myself out of that reality. They taught me how to do blood draws and stuff, and I was like, nah, this is, I don't, it just mm-mm. So I was actually, I gave my letter of resignation, and I was going to go work at Continental Airlines at the time, as just like a customer service person, and get benefits to be able to fly places. And the manager at the time said, absolutely not. She said, you are way too valuable. Because again, I was that guy, and there are a lot of these people in practice today because of my high school background, my college background's in information management. So it's all based on technology. That practice was very successful practice, but very antiquated in the technology that they used. And so when we needed to transition, actually, you remember those kind of computers,
I do.
the ones with the green screens and no mouse.
Yes.
That's what they used all across their entire practice. And this was in 2000 it was 2004, but 2000 and I think 5 or ish is when I was looking to say I'm going to go. And they said, no, we need to transition away from computers. We know we could do so much more. Why don't you join our management team? We'll take you away from the kennel 100% of the time, and we'll give you a desk in this office next to the full-time compliance person, and next to the owner of the practice. And she said, you could start doing this as soon as tomorrow. And I said, okay, I'm gonna. And she offered me a raise. And right there, one of the things when we think about mentors or people in our life who really believed in us and made a difference. Brenda Perez, who is the administrator of that practice even till this day, recognized the potential that was in me and said, no way am I going to let this talent go, that we could utilize this person to do something that her nor the owner know how to do. And so she really was pivotal to giving me the opportunity to start being hands-on. I led the search for a new practice management software. We ended up getting Cornerstone. I led the whole integration process of it, actually manually set up the computers that came into place, really worked on making sure that we utilized the modules in Cornerstone to make sure that we increase efficiency in the practice, and that we implement health report cards to give more value for services. Eventually, that role also turned into kind of an inventory role as well. And I did that for several years, working on the management team, leading this entire division of this practice, and I just loved doing it. The owner of the practice that I worked for, I don't know if you know him, but a lot of the people that have been in the veterinary industry consulting for a long time, like the Louise Dunns and the Karen Gavsners and the Fritz Woods and Karen Felsteds, the owner that I used to work for actually used to speak a lot at veterinary conferences. His name was Eddie Garcia. We share no relation. And he took me under his wing. And he really taught me the business side of veterinary medicine, taught me a lot about markups and pricing strategies and communicating value and communicating to people, managing meetings and teams. He coincidentally owned a website company called Pets, Vets, and You. And he, at the time, had someone who was working on his team there, and they were creating veterinary websites. And he said, if you want a part-time job to work on marketing and creating these websites, you're more than welcome to. And so I learned, website design, and I learned how to. This is way before social media was even something we considered using, and I loved doing that, Debbie, just so much. It was fun. I got to, help these veterinarians create websites and be proud of putting something out there to associate them brands with. I made great money on the side. We had someone who unfortunately became ill and needed to focus on her family, who was the vice president at the time. And this is after, we'd made lots of changes working in the practice. And he said to me, would you like to take on this role to take care of these accounts? And I told him, I said, absolutely. I would love to do that. And the more people that I got to talk to in that role in trying to grow that company, and the more time that I spent learning more about the challenges that veterinarians were facing and providing solutions that at the time were solutions that we were implementing in the practice, I was directly responsible for, to see that hunger that the profession had for not just marketing and websites at the time, but also tapping my brain and them saying, oh, you guys use this program in your practice too, and how do you guys use it? And I love that. And it ignited something in me, and I knew I wanted to do more of it. And so eventually led that, we sold that company, mostly because of the software that we're using at the time became antiquated. And we the owner and I came to a point to where, we could either invest all this time and money into overhauling that technology, or we can just kind of part ways. And Debbie, I was ready at that point to say, I'd learned so much. I appreciated my time there, but I want to do something for myself. And so we agreed to sell it. And then I started Simply on Tech Solutions.
Yeah. So that, starting a business is kind of scary. And I think that your background and history is very similar into mine, that we were blessed in having practice owners who were good business people and interested in forward thinking. And, my practice owner was never good at tech. In fact, when we got Cornerstone, we were in our training and he typed in some random things, charged himself over $1 million, cursed, and never touched the keyboard again. So after that, everybody else did his data entry for him. But still, the fact that you grow up in a practice that takes care of its people, has good business practices in place, good leadership standards, was forward thinking. And for me, my practice owner let me go and, you know, buy Cornerstone for our practice and create the first website of any practice in our town back in the 90s. And constantly, like, I basically just turned me loose and trusted me to kind of be this, I guess, innovative thinker, because I was always looking for like the next great thing and thinking of it from the consumer's point of view. Is like, if I were a customer, what would I like? I mean, what would make me happy? What would I like in this practice? And that's sort of the philosophy that I always had. So having that good kind of base, and then you go out and you see other practices and you go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's so different. You know, you kind of have this assumption that everybody does something sort of basically the same. And then you get out there in the world and you go, oh no, they don't. They don't at all. And they need a lot of help. So when you decided to open your own business, what was the scariest part of that for you?
Financial stability. You
Yeah.
know, I didn't know, there was, when you open your own business and you kind of get ready to go on your own, when you're on your own, you're on your own. When you don't have the security of having your health insurance paid for, which they did at the practice, for their employees that were with them for a few years, and that of knowing the consistency of when your paychecks would come in, all of that. I will say, and I talk to a lot of people who want to start a business in veterinary medicine, who have something to offer, and I tell people, and anyone, first and foremost, in a practice that is confident in something that they can do well, and if they have the passion to bring that to other people, because it's something that they want to teach more people about, I encourage them to do that. And so I talk to a lot of people who think they want to branch out to their own on their own. But what I tell them, and same thing here, is before I left that safety net, because I didn't just take that leap saying, I hope the business comes. I'd done things to kind of lead up to that point,
Mhm.
to where I could make that decision. So for me, once we sold the Pets Vets and You, the website company, I was still employed at the practice for a portion of time, and so I started reaching out to conferences, because I was happy helping people, but I wasn't going to have that anymore once we closed that company. And so I remember I reached out to AHA, because we were an AHA accredited practice, and I offered to speak at their conference, in attempts to be able to, one, even see if I could teach anyone something in a way that would mean something, in a way that they could actually take away and put action behind it. And so I started. I lectured there. I actually this was the first year that AHA started recording lectures, and they would sell them in like audio format, and I have that, first time ever on a large stage, that recording. And Debbie, I'll have to just share it for you, just personally, in an email. And one day I'll post it online. You should hear the nervousness in my voice, like when the moderator said, finish my bio. You could just hear how nervous I was, and that nervousness, lasted for a little bit, and then eventually I got so excited with what I was talking about that I was too focused on that than realizing there was a crowd of people. But what I recognized is, I need to go out there and put myself out there and see how people respond to what I think I have to offer. And fortunately, AHA took me up on that, and then a few years, and then continued to do that for other conferences. And then I started to realize I'm on to something. People seem to be really responding well. What they appreciated about me, and what I appreciate about you, and I know a lot of people that appreciate this about you, is that we grew up in a practice.
Mhm.
We knew what those challenges were. We could speak that language, and so there was a lot of advice that I was giving that really jived well with that audience. And this is why I tell people who think that they have more to offer it, because I think people want to hear from experts within other veterinary practices that have done things well, that can teach them something in a way that's relatable.
Mhm.
And so I, that was, so I did that. And then when you say the right thing at the right time to the right audience, you never know who's sitting in there. And I remember our local Elanco rep at the time, Diana Faulkner. She actually, she wasn't in the audience, but she knew that I spoke at AHA once, and she went to her district manager and she said, "Hey, there's this guy at this practice. He does this, and I think this is my own personal belief, but I think people like that are like, oh well, let's just listen to what they have to say because they're one of our customers and they do a lot of business with us, so let's give them a few minutes." And I spent time with them, and I just totally geeked all over them about just this opportunity. And so they said, let's sponsor you at a meeting. And so they sponsored me to do a meeting. Our DECRA rep sponsored to do a meeting. Got paid pennies for doing it. And again, I really felt like I loved it. And then they started to sponsor more, and those pennies turned into real dollars that meant something. And once I started getting enough of that sponsorship that was coming in, and then of course naturally people then saying, well, how can you help me? Then I started doing consulting, and then we started doing the websites, and I got to a point to where I was so busy that I could hardly be at the practice, to where it was scary, but I had that somewhat financial security
Mhm.
that, okay, maybe I am onto something. Maybe this money will continue to come if I continue to try to do the right thing.
So in your decision making, you say, okay, I'm looking at this and people are asking for my services and I'm going to have to decide where's the bandwidth, right? Because there's only so much a human can do. And I think this is something that veterinarians certainly need to learn. And as a new entrepreneur, I know that I was nuts and I worked way too much, and you probably did the same thing. But it's saying, okay, I'm all in. How did you make that decision to say, well, this is the time? This is I've got to be all or nothing on this in Simply Done.
Yeah, so I have this tendency on certain decisions to not want to think too long about it. I can I listen, let me tell you, I can overanalyze a situation to death, right? And I have. And I've had, business partners and friends who are like, whoa, take it 30 steps back. But with this decision, once I started getting the practices that were interested, and after hearing me speak somewhere, and they're saying, "Hey, let's hire you. We want to create a ground-up marketing strategy, or we need help implementing this type of technology or this series of technology in our practice." I did get to a point to where I was really busy, that the time that I was spending at the clinic was actually starting to negatively impact the amount of work that I was coming in, because I was stretching myself thin, working these two jobs. I had a hard time letting go of the practice when I did, only because it was not only of the financial stability that it brought, but even when beyond that, when I didn't really need it financially, it was the fact that, what am I going to lose touch with the industry, right? If I stop working at this practice, that thing that I felt that has made me unique, I'm going to lose that. I'm going to lose that credibility, and I'm going to stop learning, because this is where I get all my stories. This is where I can share all of these experiences that I have. But then what I quickly realized is that by consulting, you get that.
Mhm.
And so it came to a point where I said, okay, I can really focus on Simply Done Tech Solutions, and I can hire someone to, because at the time when we first started, I was creating the websites. I said I can hire someone. I hired a contractor in the beginning. Contractor is far less risky, right? You don't have to
Mhm.
guarantee them hours or anything like that. So if the business stopped coming in, then fine, you didn't have to worry about that. So I went onto a website, I hired a contractor, let him at the time focus on that, and then I was focusing on consulting. And what made the decision for me, or the point that I came to, is I said, okay, I can either continue to grow this business and really make it something that I can live off of for years to come, or I can, and I don't like using the term cut ties, but or I can, kind of give my resignation here. And so the way that I got over this idea of being fearful to kind of lose touch in working in the industry is again by realizing that I'm still working with practices. But then I came up with a consulting agreement with that practice. I said, look, I will consult with you, because they didn't want to let me go either. And I said, I'll consult with you. And I gave them, at the time, what was a lot of money for me, um, in the beginning, to be able to say, I'm going to give you a pretty good deal when it comes to consulting, and I'll come 3 times a week, and I'll still be here, and it'll be just like old times, except I won't have a desk and all that kind of stuff. And they agreed to it. So it was kind of nice because from the financial standpoint, I was still going to get paid for them, but now they were actually paying my business, which was awesome. And I don't, and I think we should celebrate that, right? If you have an employee who does something really well and they leave, then, they said, hey, we still have a lot to learn from you. And so they supported me in that way. And so eventually, between them supporting me as a consultant and paying me as a consultant, and then having that level of business, and saying, I really want to focus on this, I really want to make this my baby, then I made that decision. Otherwise, what would have happened is I would have continued to try to do both, and I wouldn't. And so something would have suffered, whether it was my time at the clinic or whether it was these practices, and I didn't want anything to suffer. So I had to make that decision. And
You have to make a decision and jump in there. We were talking a little bit before we started this video about networking and associations that we're members of, and how we basically just like, people and talking to people. But in building your business and getting your speaking engagements and actually just making this career move, tell me the value of networking and what you think that part that had to play in it.
So funny thing about that. So that's a great question. So the funny thing about networking for me is, and the role that it actually played in where I'm at today, is I'm actually an introvert. So if you look at the Myers-Briggs scale, I'm INFJ, and so very much someone who likes to avoid people, like a lot of veterinary professionals, and really didn't do well in conversations with people that I didn't know. And some of my friends know this about me that have been friends with me long enough. In the veterinary space, I could talk about the weather for an hour and a half. I perfected that because I'm also someone who doesn't like awkward silence. And so I would, at least in the beginning, and so I would just talk and the weather's great. And then I would brag about the weather in Florida because chances are they were somewhere in the snow, and I could just go on. And probably these people were like, oh my God. So I would avoid networking events. It was just the people that I knew. Like, so I really thrived on the fact that I had people here locally in Tampa that would sponsor me, and then people at other conferences that would bring me on board. But I would, the minute I was done speaking, I'd go back to my room, and that's it. You wouldn't see from me. I wouldn't attend the events. And then I met a few people. So I think the first person I met was Karen Gabser, who you know very well and who's since retired. And Karen actually knew the owner I used to work for, and she'd come to Florida. I think she was speaking at FEMA, and she was going to go to dinner with him. And I happened to be working at the practice at the time. And he said, let me introduce you to Karen. She runs a program for NAVC at the time. And so she was very kind, and she came inside and she talked to me, and she just asked me a question about social media. And I just got geeky with her again. Like, I was just like, well, here's what we do, but here's what I think the industry should do. And here's the value that it brings. And here's how to track it. Like, she would just challenge me by asking all these questions. And I was just having this great conversation. And at the end of it, she gave me her card and she said, send me an email tonight, because I want you to speak at VMX. And so, or again, NAVC at the time. And she was going to have me speak on the last day. And so Louise Dunn, who was really good friends with Karen, and I'd actually met her because, again, she knew the owner that I worked for, when she'd come into town to speak at AHA, had found out that I was going to be going to NAVC because she talked to Karen. and she'd reached out to me over the phone, and she said, okay, this is great. She said, you need to join Vet Partners. And she said, and then you need to go to their meeting. And, this was when I first started my company. And Vet Partners isn't cheap for someone who's not, who isn't about to have a salary coming in on a recurring basis. And I was like, oh my God, this woman told me I need to join this thing, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then she's like, you need to go to the annual meeting. And I said, oh my God, there's more money. And I remember I didn't stay at the hotel everyone else stayed at. I stayed at I think it was it's like a Ramada Inn that was maybe 20 minutes away from where everything was happening. And I registered to go to this meeting. I don't think I've ever told anyone this. And so I registered to go to the Vet Partners meeting, and it was the opening, the reception, and I chickened out and I didn't go. And I stayed in my room, and she calls me, and she says, "Where are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just, I'm running behind. I don't know if I'm going to make it tonight." And she said, "Well, there's some people that you need to talk to." And so she put on Bruce Truman over the phone, and who at the time worked for Vet Street. And Bruce didn't know what was going on. He's having cocktails at Vet Partners. I'm this little boy in this room, freaked out, about to meet someone who's in charge of Vet Street, which we'd used in the practice and I loved. And so he's, hi, how are you? What do you do? And so I talked to him, and he's like, well, let's have a meeting. And then she put Lowell Ackerman on the phone, who at the time worked for Zoetis. And he's like, hi, how are you? And he's like, what do you do? And I was like, here's what I do. And so he's like, let's have a meeting. And so I was like, oh my God. So I didn't end up going that evening to the thing. And she's like, well, you get here when you can. And then I, had a meeting with Bruce. I had a meeting with Lowell, and the meetings went great, and it led to more work. But I started to realize in that moment, like, wow, I really do need to connect with other people. I really do need to talk to people, because when Lowell then asked me to do the 5-minute veterinary management consult, and then asked me to do speaking for Zoetis, and then that very year, Bruce said, well, we're going to fly you to Arizona and Utah for Vet Street to do these meetings. And that's when, you start getting paid real money. And so I realized the impact of it. So I'd started to have to realize that in order to thrive, that I need to network. So this little introverted boy started to realize the importance of this. And so I did start to go to meetings, and I would find people that I would know, and I would hang out with them. But then, I'd make it a point to try to meet other people. And Debbie, now I love it. Like, now I love networking and meeting new people, but it took me years to get to that point. And so, networking and getting to know people like you in this industry is the reason I'm where I'm at today. That and mentors, of course.
It is intimidating. I can remember I joined Vet Partners, and nobody really told me what I was supposed to do when I was supposed to do my new members, elevator speech. And so I didn't have anything prepared. I just got up and I said, look, here's my name. And I just want to tell all you people that thank you so much, because all the stuff that you wrote, all the conferences that you spoke at, all the content you put out here, when I was managing practices, you were a lifesaver to me, and you educated me. And for that, I am forever grateful, and that's it. And then that was my elevator speech. And said, oh, by the way, I'm a practice management consultant. And then I walked off. But it really is. And I've had talked to a lot of new members when they go into that group, and you're sitting there and you're looking at Karen Gavsner and Karen Felstead and Louise and Fritz Woods and all these people that have written and spoken, and they're sitting up there on that pedestal, and you're thinking, oh, these are the people who taught me everything I know. And then you go and you meet them and you find out these are just really great folks. They're just nice people, and they're fun. And you and I, like I said, we've had some good fun, and you put Mary Gardner in there and we really have a good time.
Pictures. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And just like you said, just don't know. I mean, Lowell asked me to write a chapter in the 5-minute practice management consultant. And I thought, how cool is this? This is the book I had to study for my CVPM, and now I'm writing a chapter in it. So it really is, it all kind of plays together, and you do find that it's fun, and it's so interesting. I guess if you go at it like people are fascinating to me, and I always am really interested in what they do and what they think and the new thing that they're, it's evolving in their mind and how exciting that thing is. And kind of and by, the networking, especially the people that we know, you get to find out stuff that's a couple of years ahead of being
Mhm.
launched,
Oh yeah.
sometimes, and it really puts you ahead of the game. So yeah, you got to go and you got to push through your comfort zone or out of your comfort zone, I guess, to really do this stuff. Because a lot of times I laugh and I tell people when I was young, I was shy, and my husband goes, "You got to be kidding me!" I said, "I promise, I really was a shy kid because I'm like you. There's a lot of I in me, and I love data and reports and reading, and I can sit at a computer all day, but I really also have a lot of that extrovert, because I do like people, and that's why I'm suffering greatly during a
Well,
pandemic. I'm
even
suffering.
this introvert is like, what's going on, you know? I find the thing that really helped me though in that whole networking process is because I always felt like I had to talk, and really that's not how networking works.
Yeah.
Because again, I wanted to feel I didn't like silence, and I felt like someone needed to keep the conversation going. But what I found, and I still do it to this day, is if you can get that other person, because I could relate to this at least, to talk about what they do and get really excited about what they do and why they think what they do is
Mhm,
unique and the challenges that they face, I can jump into that anytime.
mhm.
Right. So if I were to get you to talk about how you love consulting with practices and the challenges that you feel the industry faces, I probably have an opinion. And I'll probably share with you how in my line of work that I see some of the same things and what my
Mhm.
approaches are. And but that's the whole starting the conversation though, when you're just a newbie and you know no one, that was the most terrifying part to
Yeah,
me. But
yeah. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, "And what do you do?"
yeah, right.
What role do you play in your company, or what,
Let me tell
what's
you. Yeah.
yeah, there you go. And this is
Yeah.
what you do. Um, so Eric, what advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about, starting their own business? And I think that I know that you're probably is involved with networks, Facebook, technology. I mean, Twitter and Instagram, and you're seeing the same posts that I'm seeing. Is that there's a lot of people who are just kind of I'm done, or there's the next thing, I want to do the next thing. Um, Making a big career decision, making that move. Do you have advice that you would give to people that are ready or thinking about making a move out of what they're doing right now because they're unhappy and moving into a new situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things. First and foremost is if someone feels that they have more that they can offer and they've kind of reached that place in their practice, this is assuming they're in practice, and they've reached that point in their career or their practice that you know what they're very satisfied with what they've accomplished, and they feel like they can bring their ideology, their advice, their information, their ideas to the profession. The first advice that I give them is do it, like pursue it, don't question it. I never had time to sit here and sketch out my 5-year plan, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, right? Any one of these books up here about how to run a business say you need to know what your 1 year, what your short term, what your long term goal is. I remember someone asked me a few years ago, they're like, what was your 5-year goal? I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. So just if you know you could do it, just start putting action behind uh, working toward that goal, and you're going to figure it out as you go along. But just remain authentic with yourself in that process. Which and what I mean by that is when you determine what it is that you feel you can help people with, narrow it down to a few things. Is the thing that you're good at leadership? Is the thing that you're good at getting team members to get along? Is the thing that you're good at marketing? Is the thing that you're good at only social media, not all of marketing? Is the thing that you're good at only what? Find those things that you feel you're good at, that really ignite you, that give you fulfillment, and then start making sure that you work toward building a business that's going to solve that pain point. But I also challenge that person to think about how their approach and what they're going to do is unique. I felt my approach in the beginning, in terms of what I did and maybe what I do was the fact that I did work in a practice, and I get what they're going through. I felt what makes me unique is that I share a lot of real stories of real veterinary practices who have executed various strategies. So everyone has something that I think is unique to them in how they can offer what they offer. And so I challenge that individual to think about what that is. I was there's someone who I know right now that has a job at a pet food company, has been in sales for a few years, and they are they haven't worked in a practice themselves, but they've sales reps have been in numerous practices and
Mhm.
see all the problems and help provide solutions. And she reached out to me a few months ago and she said, Eric, I want to do more to help practices. And so what makes her unique is the fact that she's seen so many more practices, right? When you and I first started, it was our practice and then the few that we were able to work with.
Mhm.
But she has the opportunity of having worked with numerous
Yeah.
practices in her sales position to help increase compliance, to help the team members all communicate successfully.
Mhm.
And so she was able to get in tune to that. Um, so I challenge that individual to find what it is that's going to make them unique in their approach, and then to work with a practice or two. I think once we make changes in our own practices in the beginning, that's one thing, but then you need to bring that somewhere else. So maybe reach out to a practice or a veterinarian in your community, maybe that isn't a competitor if it becomes less threatening, or someone else that you can be connected to. Talk to your drug reps, talk to your local managers group, tell people that you're going to do this. And then try to work on it with another practice. I remember one of my first clients outside of my own practice was in Chicago, and that was one of the first few practices where I was able to say, okay, I can do this, because and there's a lot to learn when you're working with a practice that isn't
Mhm.
your own. And so I challenge you to execute some of your strategies with a few practices. I encourage people to, if they're comfortable, consider speaking at conferences. Conferences are looking for new speakers. Karen
Mhm.
Gavser put me on a Wednesday at VMX, or again NABC, at the time, and she told me, which I loved. She said, I try to find new speakers and I put them on the last day, and I thought that was an honor. The last day is actually a good thing. You're the last thing they remember. And so submit to conferences to be able to communicate and share other people. I do tell people to join vet partners, to be able to have the opportunity to network with other people as well. And then aside from all that, of course, create a website, have something that you can proudly send to a potential sponsor. If you know someone who has a sales position somewhere, but they want you to refer them to their district manager or to the person that's head of education at that company, well, have something that represents you in a way that you're proud of. And so have a website. You can go on wix.com, create your own website. You don't even have to spend money doing it.
Mhm.
And then start telling or sharing to people how you can help. And then certainly social media presence. Although I will say, and this is probably backwards than anything that you'll ever read in a book or anything, social media presence is really important and it can really, really help. But I think there's a million things that we just talked about that should be done first.
Mhm.
Once you've done that, then the rest will kind of follow,
Mhm.
right? The rest will really kind of grow organically, right? You'll get people who see what you do, and certainly it can help you early on. But I wouldn't put as much of an emphasis on that than I would connecting with the people that can help you grow much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to go and do all this stuff on social and be an influencer, and then people are going to reach out to me. I don't know that that happens a lot. I think it happens, like you said, the other way around. And I've always been pretty active on social just because I like to learn from what's going on out there. It's the ears to the ground. Like you said, you're kind of worried that if you're not in a lot of practices, then you miss what's happening. And for me, I've always taught the Patterson University classes, and so those technicians and managers and receptionists that I teach have kept me grounded as to what's going on in the day to day for 10, 15 years now. But it's important to know, what lives they're living at this point in
Hmm.
time. You mentioned social media, and this is something I told you I was going to talk about before I let you go, and that is your hashtag enough already, because you actually, I have a sticker on my computer from the last meeting we attended together. So this isn't something new that you started. I've had a sticker for about a year at least.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start the hashtag, and where do you think we can go with it?
Yeah. So first off, thank you for letting me use your platform to talk about this. It started. You're right. So enough already. The idea came about maybe about a year and a half ago, and what ended up happening was a colleague of mine, and I'll withhold names throughout this whole experience here, who is just a really good person, just someone who is genuinely interested in helping people in their career. This person is a veterinary nurse. They really spend time mentoring people who are in tech school or who are looking to earn advanced education within being a veterinary nurse, and just an all around just good-hearted person, very well admired in the industry, and just an authentic person. And there was someone who posted on social media, and they made the comment that their objective moving forward is to bring down leaders in the industry, and that's a watered down version of what was said. There were some not so nice words in that, and I'd made it a goal to do that. And somehow or another, in the form of comments, um, this person who I know, whose name was brought up in a very negative way, this person tried to do what any of us would do in that situation, and really just defend themselves, but not even defend themselves in a way that you could really cause more harm than good. It was more of an innocent way of defending yourself, and it just got really nasty from that point. It had only come across my page because I think so many people had engaged with it that it even showed up on my feed. And I looked at that and I talked to this person, and it really made me upset. And I this was at the time when every morning I would go for a walk, and I would not bring my phone. And so the next morning when I went for a walk, I was thinking about the situation because it continued to escalate. It got even worse. There were other people's names that were drug into it, and it was just really dark. And I remember, and I was on a walk, and I started thinking about the situation. I started crying. I got really emotional for the people who were being targeted in this. And then not even a few days later, there's a group on Facebook, and someone wrote an article, and this person wrote an article for a vet school, and they were just sharing their vet school experience when they were in vet school. This is kind of how they got through it. It was really hard for them, and then they talked about how after they graduated vet school, how they started their business. And people in that group, someone decided to share the article and say that it was out of touch with reality, and really just started really dissing this person in a negative way. And I read the article. It was nothing but a story that you and I are sharing right now.
Mhm.
And just and so other people had to jump in and try to defend that person, and then other people would try, and I didn't understand it. People were just being negative. And then not even a few days later, this all just kind of happened in a week. There was an Instagram account, and it was an Instagram account that was from someone who must work in a corporate practice, one of the big corporate practices, and it was basically people against, and it was that corporate group. And it was an employee who was just posting obscenities, just saying really dark things about the veterinarians that work for that organization and who manage it, and just kept on posting. And I thought, yeah, this is not okay. And I reached out to some friends, and I was doing what I tell people they should do in those situations when it upsets you in a way. You should vent offline. You should talk to people. And Debbie, what I found out was this was happening far more rampant than I even realized. It just spilled into my network at that time. And it was really upsetting. And so friends would send me screenshots of examples of things that they would identify. And so I wrote this article a year and a half ago. So I came up with this idea of enough already. So hashtag enough already. And the whole idea behind it is that if you see negativity on social media, and it can be anywhere really, but specifically what I'm referring to is what started it all, and that's negativity within our own profession, that instead of choosing to engage with the conversation by either adding more negativity or by trying to try to add to it in other ways, maybe we're going to try to share something that we think and hope will change someone's mind, that instead we just walk away from it and that we say enough already. Because what happens is when we see these conversations and we add to them, right? We either share more negativity or maybe we try to change someone's mind. What we do is we just fuel the anger, right? No one goes on social media in a thread that has become toxic and say, you know what, you changed my mind. I get it now, right? And that's about anything. Conversations on social media are in a majority of cases, not all, but in a majority of cases are non-productive once they take that toxic turn. And so the whole idea here is to say enough already. And I wrote that article, a year and a half ago, and I kept it really close to me. I didn't publish it because I didn't know what to do with it. At the time, I was the columnist at Today's Veterinary Business. I'd sent it to them. They were going to publish it. And I said, no, I don't want you to publish it. I want it back. And I didn't know how the industry would react to something like that, to try to stand up for bullying. But then only recently did I recognize that I shouldn't stand on this for any longer. And here's the thing, Debbie, we're a profession prone to suicide, right? Why are we doing the same thing that hurts our mental health that pet owners do to us? Right? Pet owners attack us online. They say negative things about us. They drag our name through the mud, right? I can share so many stories that would make you cry from veterinarians that were attacked by pet owners and how it affected their mental health. And so now we decide that let's just do it to our own. Let's go ahead and call every veterinary professional out on social media instead of reaching out to that person and having a conversation with them over the phone. Debbie, if I was mad at you about something, you're not going to see me go on Facebook and say, Debbie Boone is the most horrible person in the world. I'm going to reach out to you. I owe you that professional courtesy, right? I'm going to make change because if there's something that you're doing that I don't like, well, then what can I do to try to inspire change in another way? And that's what enough already is it's to say, you know what, I can say here and I can vent to you and I can say, I'm mad about this. And I can complain about it on social media, or I can do something, right? I can try to inspire people to get away from it. And so I just think that we can do better as a profession. I think that we can make more change by not bringing other people down. Debbie, I've gotten stories, emails from practices since posting the article, since originally sharing the post a year and a half ago, about people sharing how they've been bullied in their own community, from the veterinarian down the street to their old vet school classmate to someone that's on social media. And the stories are just disgusting.
They are.
And it's not okay.
Yeah, I agree. Well, kindness is cheap, and giving people grace is always the best policy. And those comments that we think, those gut reaction, limbic brain, not so smart comments that we want to make on social media that are there to make us feel superior for a moment and then ashamed for a year. Take a moment, it's like the email, write the email, look at it, sleep on it for 24 hours, come back to it and go, do you really still want to send that? And I think that might be a really good idea before every post you put that you think your self-righteousness is showing, then maybe you better think about that a little bit longer before you put it on there and say, is this going to hurt somebody? Is it going to Do I understand their side of the story? Because, always there's two sides of the story, and
Mm,
somewhere in the middle lies the truth. So, what is the truth? And we don't know it, and we're not going to find it out on a post,
mm,
especially in 144 characters.
right.
So, that's where conversation comes in. And that's why I've spent the last 15 years teaching communication to animal people. That's my elevator speech. Somebody says, "What do you do, Deb?" And I said, "Well, I teach animal people how to successfully communicate with humans, and hopefully that then the pets get the best care that they can."
Mm,
And now I need to teach them how to communicate with each other. But it's just it's very self gratifying in the moment.
mm,
But then you look back on it and you go,
mm,
that's just showing me to be a very small person, and I should be better than that. And so we all should aspire to be better people than our impulses. I'm not a fan of rants. I study neuroscience a lot. And people go, rants are cathartic. Oh, no, they're not. They are basically 2-year-old temper tantrums that teach us no self control and no emotional intelligence. So as we get older, we identify our emotions accurately, and then we learn self talk that says, I don't have to behave. I can understand my emotion. And I talk myself through conversations in my head all the time about how I feel about certain things. But then I also talk myself off a ledge a lot of times. And I
mm.
think that's a skill set that needs to be taught and nurtured in definitely in the social media community.
Yeah, and psychologists have proven what you said. Rants, especially on social media, are not productive. It's not theory. That's been proven.
Mm-hmm.
But I think but you have just beautifully summed that up, and that's exactly what I'm trying to get out of people's to think and to recognize that what you're about to send, there's a real human being that's about to process
Mm-hmm.
that in an emotional way. And how would you
Mm-hmm.
feel if that was being said to you?
On the other side. That's right. Exactly right. Well, Eric, I've taken a lot of your valuable time, and I so appreciate it. And I thank you for doing the enough already. And I'm going to share your article in my newsletter and out on my social media because I think it's very important. Um, Tell us a little bit, some final words, anything you want to talk to people about your company, how they can get in touch with you. And of course, your information is going to be posted at the end of the video and in the comments so people can reach out to you. But anything, a favorite quote, shout out to somebody that really helped you, anything you want to say.
I'll oh, let's see. So I'll share something that I learned yesterday from an author and researcher. His name's Sean Acor. And I'll share this with you because it's fresh, and I've not shared it with anyone else yet. It had a profound impact on me when he said this. I was just, and it may not to anyone else, but to me. But a few things. So one is, I think 2020 has brought us a lot of unhappiness, a lot of uncertainty, and when we think about ways to make us happier, a lot of us are encouraged to create gratitude journals, to where we write down things that we're thankful for. And what was really interesting that Sean had recommended is that, yes, of course, that's important, but he also said to try to further that, to try to instill kindness in the world. And so he'd recommended that you write down one thing that you have done that day, or at some point, that is kind. And I thought that was just excellent, right? Because I can write down what I'm thankful for, and that's great. But if I want to encourage more people to be happy, if I want to do more good in the world, then hold myself accountable by sharing one thing that I've done that is kind, that is actually doing something. And then the other thing that he shared was, and the reason I'm looking over there is I wrote it on my
Oh,
whiteboard because is he has this thing that he calls your meaning portfolio, right? It's the thing, it's a series of things that makes us happy. It's the things that make us happy in our family life are part of your meaningful portfolio. If you're in a relationship, it's a part of a meaningful portfolio. If you find happiness in work, and so we have all of these things that make up what makes us happy, and you put this into your meaningful portfolio. And he said it's important that we diversify our portfolio. If we put our happiness all in one place, if we experience a deficit, then it leaves us empty. So if I put all of my happiness into my relationship, or all of my happiness into my work, and something happened at work or something happened in my relationship, then I'm not going to have anything. And so I think a lot of times we all do, and I'm guilty of this. We don't diversify our portfolio. And I was talking to a friend of mine today who also heard that, and she was sharing with me something that she doesn't find meaningful in her life that she does on a recurring basis. And she says, I'm going to drop that stock. So I'm going to drop that from my meaningful portfolio because it's not contributing in a positive way. So I thought that was really great. So that's what I would leave people with,
I
is
like
just
that.
new information that I'd learned. And certainly, anyone can follow me anywhere on social media, Eric Garcia FL.
All right.
But Debbie, I
Thank you
appreciate
so
all you
much.
do,
Just
by the way. Thank
those
you.
random acts of kindness. You and I both spend a lot of time in airports, and one of my favorite things to do is to give some stranger in an airport a compliment and then just
Mm,
walk away.
that
And
is so
watching the expression on people's face, their body language changes, their demeanor lights up. And it can be as simple as complimenting somebody who's taking their shoes off in the
mm,
TSA line, going, these are really cute shoes, as they struggle to put them back on and move on in the line. But those things cost us nothing,
mm.
but they make a tremendous impact on that person for the whole rest of the day. They'll just think back on that and go, that just makes me feel good. And we make ourselves feel better when we make other people feel better. I can remember watching Michael J. Fox struggle to get to the podium at VMX. He actually stumbled and was standing there at the podium with blood on his knuckles. And he said, I don't feel sorry for myself. He said, if you want to, live a good life, go do something for somebody else. And
Mm.
then you don't feel sorry for yourself. You'll be happy. And I think that's exactly right. So
I love that.
yeah, I think it's a good way to end our conversation. So thank you a million times, and for all that you do for VetMed, and for teaching me how to tweet a long
Not
time
twerk,
ago.
not twerk.
Not to work.
That's for
I
another day.
still can't do that. I don't even want to do that. Thanks.
Oh, I miss your face, and I look forward to
Oh, I
airplanes
miss seeing you.
together.
We'll be on airplanes again soon.
I
We
know,
will.
I know.
We will. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.